As a Unitarian Universalist who doesn't really follow the Bible a lot, but being raised in a way by Union Theological Seminary, a progressive Christian school, this verse is used all the time in progressive religious spaces, particularly when it comes to social justice work. What are we required as faith? To do justice, to love kindness or mercy, to walk humbly. And yet I've seen this text used in ways that kind of contradict it. This is used by social justice space to be like, so we have to do more justice. We got to do more justice work, right? And it falls usually into a trend of the optimistic progressive. We're on a path of the universe arcing towards justice. We're gonna change the world together. Unitarian Universalists themselves have always been a quite optimistic bunch. We tend to call ourselves a liberal and progressive faith, not just because many of our values do end up kind of aligning with liberal progressive politics, but actually because of the meaning of those individual words. Liberal meaning liberty, freedom of belief, we're a non-creedal faith, freedom of belief, liberal, and progressive as we believe in the progression of justice, the progression of human goodness on the earth. We believe in the ultimate progress of human endeavors. These are strong, fundamental, and important beliefs that foster hope in our human ability to make steady and real difference and change. And this Micah passage often gets used to kind of reinforce that. It's a beautiful way of calling us towards the vision of the world we want to dream. And, this is a little hard for me to preach because there is nothing wrong with imagining and visioning a progress, a grand vision of who we can become. But sometimes both our culture and our faith's notions of progress are not only daunting and nearly impossible, but maybe even heartbreaking in a world experiencing so much trauma, pain, and environmental devastation. What happens to our notions around progress, our grand dreams, when our social movements, inevitably, throughout all of time, but especially right now, like reproductive justice or LGBTQ acceptance, are going backwards in time a little bit lately? What happens to our notions of progress when it gets harder and harder for everyday people to find stable work? What happens to progress when so much of the industrial progress of the 18th and 19th century and 20th century that we built for a more broader world ends up doing environmental harm? When is progress maybe a little too much progress? When might it be important to stop? The notion of stopping this cultural focus on progress and progress and progress is actually what the DeGrowth movement is about. I only know a little bit about this, so experts in the room, please correct me. But I'll show you with what some of my research is. DeGrowth is not new. It actually started around the 1970s. But degrowth is mostly an economic theory. It's actually an economic theory. It's gone out into other environmental justice, philosophy, arts, education movements from then. But according to the DeGrowth website, this is what degrowth is mostly about. Quote, degrowth is an idea that criticizes the global capitalist system which pursues growth at all costs, causing human exploitation and environmental destruction. The degrowth movement of activists and researchers advocates for societies that prioritize social and ecological well-being instead of corporate profits, overproduction, and excess consumption, end quote. It's basically as simple as that. Instead of basing our world economies, including either international economies or national economies, on our GDP, on our production, or on our profits, what if we based our economies on what was self-sufficient, on what was stable and sustainable, on how well people are living, or our relationship to our environment. This feels nearly impossible to imagine in our world right now because everything is judged on our GDP. Everything is judged on our profit margins, on our profit and loss statements. That's how a business is successful. And yet, I think in 2024, we're starting to see how some of these things don't work out quite well. The biggest example recently that comes to mind is Boeing, right? Pursuing profits at all costs comes at a cost, and that includes human safety, labor practices, and environmental relationships. Okay, so I'm doing that economy thing again. I'm talking about, what does this have to do with faith? What does this have to do with Unitarian Universalism? Whether or not we're talking about a business profit margins, or we're talking about our own personal sense of progress, our notions of what is progress, of what is an accomplishment or success, are firmly rooted in religious roots, in our Protestant roots. The whole reason people came over on the Mayflower is because they saw this country as an empty space where they could build their own city on a hill utopia. Manifest destiny is written everywhere in our American history, and Unitarian Universalism is absolutely not immune to that. In fact, it's in the 5 tenets of Unitarianism in the 1800s that James Freeman Clarke defined one of the tenets of Unitarianism being, quote, "the progress of mankind onward and upward forever." The progress of mankind upward and onward forever. I understand what our ancestors meant by this. They meant that someday we will continue to practice our morality until we come to this perfect union of what it means to be human together. It is not bad to believe that that is actually possible. It's written all over our roots. And also, that practice, practically, that belief that, oh, we're on this trend of progress, has caused some harm in our history. Whether through paternalism, whether through white supremacy practices, environmental destruction, our relationship to the indigenous peoples of our land. Justice will come down like waters, but it doesn't mean we understand or know how it will happen. I'm not saying this the best, but Nancy MacDonald Ladd says it much better than I ever could in her book, After the Good News. She says one of the things that she loves as a Unitarian Universalist minister about us is this sense of social justice commitment. And also, I'm quoting her, quote, "We are so utterly and damnably sure of ourselves." She says, quote, "Our good news has become a good word about our own capacity to fix things, that we can fix everything, which leaves little room for honest atonement or our own complicity in brokenness, and when we don't quite fix everything," right? When we think about manifest destiny or modernist notions of human progress, we have this push to greatness, to this grand vision of ideals. And ideals are not a bad thing, but it's okay to sit in our own human reality of maybe we're not going to make that perfect vision, and that's okay. What happens when we don't live into that grand idea of justice and fairness? Or when the progress we thought was progress ends up doing harm? What I want for us, what I want for myself as a Unitarian Universalist, is not to give up on the vision of justice, but to admit and say it's okay to be human, and we have enough as we are. We have enough as we are. I see our notions of progress, both culturally, our own capitalism growth and expansion, as well as this idealism play out in our congregations and cultures, right? We have to do more. We have to do it right. We have to keep going. We have to just keep growing. If only we had more. If only we had more money. If only we had more people. And I hear that. But if each of our congregations only exists to grow for more people, we will surely die. There is more about us than how many people we bring in the doors or how much money we have. That's not why we gather as Unitarian Universalists. So I just want us to stop for a minute. Take a deep breath. We have enough and are enough as we are because of who we are, not how much we do or what we do. We are a bunch of people who miraculously take a moment on a Sunday morning, that's a feat, to come together, to strive to be better people, to live into our values, to advocate for justice. In this community, we've made local connections to our Mount Kisco food pantry. We're doing some daring things, including, I am so grateful for our board in this community, a drag story hour next Sunday at 5:30 p.m. We're making relationships and connections. We are exploring what it means to be a community. We are doing good work as we are. The pressures of our wider culture that ever seeks for more and more and more is not going to give us benefit. But being faithful to each other, to our purpose of how we gather and who we want to be, does and will continue to make a difference, and will even set us on a path of growth. This is why I keep coming back to the Micah text over and over again, and why it sits on my heart, even though it belongs to a tradition I do not myself belong to. Because instead of using it as the preeminent social justice text, I remember that what it says is it's okay to be human. What does your faith require of you? Does it require 1,000 lambs, tens of thousands of rivers of oil? Does it require that your organization have a $500,000 budget? Does it require that your size is 130 people or more? Does it require you to have a full program staff? Does it require you to be doing 5 different social justice projects? No, no. What does your Unitarian Universalist faith require you to do? To do justice with each other, to be a loving community, to walk humbly with your beliefs and with each other in your community. We are enough. I want us as your minister to grow, but I want us to grow in spirit. I want us to grow in transformation and change of each other. I want us to grow in loving connection. I want us to grow our roots in our Mount Kisco community. I want us to grow in our vision of what and who we want to be. And that comes with sustainability, with steady progress, with being enough as we are. Being a religious institution in 2024 is not the same as it was literally 4 years ago, if not 10, if not 20, if not 30. The old metrics no longer apply. We are embarking on some uncharted territory, and religious professionals like myself everywhere aren't certain of what's coming next. But I, through this passage, and through my Unitarian Universalist faith, and through this witness of you, believe we have enough to make it through as we are. We're going to thrive in 10, in 5, in 20, in 25 years because we got it. We have enough because of who we are. What does your faith require of you? Whatever this message is for you today, I hope you understand it both in the big picture of the economy, but individually as people and as a community. You don't have to make 100 pies, okay? Be steadfast in who you are and know you are enough. For what does our faith require of you? To center love and kindness, to do justice in your small own ways, and to walk humbly with yourself and others. We can do that just as we are. May it be so.